Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 6 of number 6. And this story, man, I have liked the dystopian elements, and I've talked with a lot of you on YouTube and on Patreon about the series. And the dystopian elements, I feel, were really, really prevalent in episodes 1 through 3. And then in the last 2 episodes, it's become a bit more character focused, specifically on Nezumi, aka Rat, and Shion, which is fine because, as you know, I really like character driven stories. The dystopian elements are obviously a really cool bonus, and I love that about them, but I'm definitely interested in the characters. And so this development with Shion and Nezumi is really interesting. I've had a lot of people comment on YouTube that this show, one of the disappointing things about it is that it kind of loses sight of the dystopian elements. And I can start to see that. I still really like the show, and I like where it's going. I'm curious, but I think the fact that I'm going to be reading the manga afterwards is going to be nice, because then I can kind of see, okay, what was left out, what had to be cut, because I can't, again, episode 4 pretty much ends where volume 2 ends, and there's still 7 more volumes to go and only 7 more episodes, so there's a lot of content that I know had to have been cut or altered, and so I'm going to be really curious to see what exactly that is in relation to the story. So I am curious about that. So when we left off, we discovered Shion discovered Nezumi's acting career in the Orpheum. There's this weird connection between Safu and Nezumi now that has to do with something with number 6. I'm sure it has to do with Nezumi getting experimented on. And then we also have Safu's grandmother has passed, and so she's going back to number. She's been off at liberal arts school in number 5, and now she's going back to number 6. And I like that Safu's character has seemingly developed a little bit. I like that. I was afraid in this series she was going to be very one note, but it seems like she's going to have a more impact on the story maybe, and have more to do, which is good. But I'll be honest, I really don't want Safu and Shion to get together, because I'm like, this whole thing has been building to the fact that Shion and Nezumi, they got a thing, and Nezumi is terrified of it because he's having gay panic, because he realizes that he does like Shion, and he's left himself vulnerable. He spent all these years building up this wall and building up this resistant to human contact, and now that Shion is there, it all crumbles down, and he's you can tell he's afraid of that vulnerability that he's left and what it could mean, and he doesn't know what it means. And Shion, for as naive and idealistic as he is, he does have a pretty grounded idea about what he wants, and I think that scares Nezumi too, because Nezumi's not sure what he wants in terms of this relationship, and Shion seems pretty adamant that he knows what he desires. So that's interesting. And then in the foreground of all this, there's the fact that bees are coming out of people and killing them, that the winter is not stopping the infestation, and that's lovely. So I'm really concerned about the mom. We didn't see her last episode, but I'm concerned about her because, one, she's in the city where you can get stung and still killed, but also this news reporter. I know some people are like, oh, he's just a news reporter. I don't get good vibes from him, especially because he's a news reporter and she has prior connections to this organization that has been doing, obviously, some experimentation and things in number 6. We just don't know what yet. So that connection gives me some ominous vibes, and I just want her to be safe because she seems like she's a good person, and Shion's very connected to his mother, so I want her to be safe too. So I don't know. And then we also have the 2 kids, Rico and Karen, that are in the West Block, in the city part, and in the manga, Shion kind of attaches himself to him because the girl has the same name as his mom, and Nezumi points that out last episode, but also because they're little kids and they're innocent, and he feels bad for them and he wants to help them. So lots of stuff going on, and I don't know what all we're going to delve into this episode. Inukashi, Dog Loan, she's still there. The guy, his name starts with an R, Rikiga, I think. I can't ever remember his name. The man from the Latch Building, he's still present in the story, and so I'm curious to know what part they will play, because we're past the halfway point, because there's only 11 episodes, so we're past the halfway point at this stage of the anime. So I'm curious to know if this is going to be a more character-driven episode again and get more into Safu maybe, or what they're going to do with the plot. So Like I said in the last reaction, I've read up to volume 2 of the manga, but I think I want to get at least to episode 8 before I read any further, because I don't want to spoil myself. I spoiled myself to the grandma's death, because that's how volume 2 ends, is them telling Safu that the grandma has died. But it doesn't happen with any of this theater stuff, so they clearly reworked the plot and cut some corners and rearranged things. So probably around episode 8, when we finish episode 8, I'll read a little bit more into the manga, and then I'm definitely doing like a soapbox review of the manga afterwards, and then when we do the live stream of this, which will probably be the week after that, we'll talk more about what's going on. So in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction, but we are going to start episode 6 here of number 6 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh! True lies and fabricated truths. Oh, buddy. Oh, okay. Okay. We're not gonna panic. We're not gonna freak out. No reasons for that. That preview just has me like, what? What we doing? So, oh my god, this episode. This episode was really good, but there's so many things that it's setting up. I don't know what they're gonna do with Safu. I'm a bit worried about that. As soon as she went to find the mom, I was like, oh, come on, like you're just, I'm like, don't tell her anything, don't tell Safu anything, because it's just gonna say, for some reason, and I don't know if it's the fact that the reporter guy is kind of after the mom or wants to be with her, or what the case is, or the fact that she's got that connection to the organization, or that she's got the connection to the man that clearly Nezumi knows is like one of the higher up scientists, things like that. For some reason, Shion's mom seems to have a little bit of protection there, but everyone around her does not. So clearly someone is helping to keep the mom okay for the time being. And so Safu does not have that protection. And what I love that commentary at the start of this episode where the older woman is like, oh, you're from here, aren't you? And Safu's like, how did you know? And she's like, oh, well, you just have a different air. You've come back here, but you've been outside of number 6. So you have a different air about you. Like the wind is around you. And that connects kind of like the whole thing with Nezumi and her from the last episode. But the idea that she's been outside of the... She's expanded her horizons. She's been outside of the walls of number 6 and seen that it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. This utopian society isn't the end-all be-all. There's stuff out there. And I hate that. Like, that's so telling when she gets there and they're like, oh, you can't bring... The fact that they're like, you can't bring personal belongings into number 6, so you can't bring any outside culture things into the culture. Once you get in, it's only what is fabricated here, what is created here. So you can't bring outside propaganda into number 6. You have to just stick with whatever number 6 gives you, which is a very dystopian, like, just, ugh. And it was just a Picasso book of art. Like, that's all it was. And they were like, nope. But yeah, Safu clearly has been changed from being outside the walls. And I love that montage of her just walking around the city, and it's not what she used to be. Because at the start of this series, she was like, oh, number 6 is so great. And Shion, number 6 is wonderful. And don't you love number 6? And then I love that montage of her coming back and looking around. And yeah, there's people happy and people... It's not like the world hasn't changed. People are still happy and going on about their lives. But her perspective and feelings for it has changed. And that's so apparent in that moment. And then there's the bit with the grandma. And I'll be honest, y'all, that hit me pretty hard. And it still hits me pretty hard because my great-grandmother just passed like a few days ago. So... It's like still trying to process that, and there is so much. I mean, it's if you have an older relative, even if you've had an older relative that has been like in an assisted living or a nursing home, and she was my great grandmother, so she was like in her late 90s, but there's still that idea of, was she happy there? Because my family wasn't really around her, and with all the pandemic and stuff, it's very complicated. But there's that feeling of guilt and that feeling that, was she really happy and could I have done more? And it hit me really hard in that episode because I completely relate to Safu's conflict there. Like, was she happy? Was I not paying attention to what she was trying to say? And could I have done more? And so that part just gutted me. Like, that was just heartbreaking because it's so true to life and it's so relatable if you've been in that situation. But then it takes a weird ominous turn because, yeah, like, her only belonging they gave her was her glasses. So it's like, the needle, what happened with the sewing needle? Where did that go? Like, that was her prized possession. Did you throw it away? Did they just throw it out because they didn't see any value in it? When clearly that has a heavy sentimental value to Safu and her grandmother. So did they just throw it out? And then nothing smelled. There was no scent. And her in the field of flowers, it's almost like you could feel in that moment, even though you can't smell the anime, it feel in that moment like the flowers didn't have scent maybe, and she was picking up on that, like there wasn't, like her grandmother wasn't present in that moment. So I really want to get back to the manga and see what all is delving into that part, if any of this, because there's been some things in this anime I've noticed have been anime only, like they've been added in or altered just for the anime, and I'm assuming it's just to make the story more coherent without having to have the extra manga stuff in there because you don't have time. But but I'm really curious. I'm really curious to see how they deal with this in the manga. But she realizes in that moment, she's like, this city's full of lies, and my grandmother this isn't her smell, and this is where's the sewing needle? Like, they're just telling me she was happy, but clearly it's a lie, so what's going on? And that's when she realizes that Shion's been labeled a felon and is missing. And then she goes to the mom, and I'm like, that's a stupid thing to do, because you're going to get the mom in trouble, but no, it's just Safu ends up getting taken. And so I'm worried about that, and the mom having Safu's scarf makes me a little bit worried too. And in the preview, it shows her with the reporter, which I don't like that scenario at all. I don't like her relying on him. I'm like, he's sketch. I thought he's been sketch since episode 1, or episode 2 when he shows up. So I'm like, But this episode talks a lot about life and death, and there's lots of parallel themes. So the scene with Safu's grandmother, even though she has all the flowers and it's very colorful and pretty, she's in this cold, isolated room alone with just her belongings beside her. And it's it's very sanitized and clinical. It's very different than the death of Doglone's uncle, technically the dog, where they're out in the mud and the muck digging a hole. It's much more personal because they're all there. And they're talking about like singing, they're talking about like kind of like singing a song to in memoriam. There's a lot more personal ties to this funeral like arrangement for this dog in West Block than there is for the grandmother in number 6. So that's a pretty apt commentary on how they view life and death there. And death, they just kind of say, oh, she was happy, and sweep it under the rug and move on. Whereas in the West Block, where things are a lot more intimate and gritty and personal, there's a lot more connection. And Doglone getting mad at Inukashi getting mad at Nezumi because she's like, oh, you're not, helping out at all. And then she goes to chase him down. And that fits Nezumi's character, because Nezumi clearly wants to distance himself from anything human, which is hilarious to me because Nezumi has lots of emotions and he's trying to distance himself from them and claim they don't exist. And it's like, nah, they exist. You're not doing a very good job of hiding this. But him trying to distance himself and just not taking part in the funeral because he doesn't want to have a personal connection to Inukashi and her struggles. And clearly, Regika, or gosh, I can't remember his name to save my life. And by the end of the series, I'll probably remember it. But the man from the Latch Building, he's like, this is why am I holding this dead dog? Nope. And so that's interesting that Shion is like, I want to try to create a serum for my blood, and I think it's Regika is getting me the vials and the stuff to help do that. And Shion, as we've established from number 6, they're like prodigy little genius children, so Shion is smart. He was doing like anesthesia and sutures at age 12. So as far-fetched as it is, I could see him at least experimenting, trying something, doing something. I mean, he's like, at this point, something needs to happen. But I think when Nezumi's like, oh, well, you either love me or you love number six. And Shion's like, it's not black and white like that. It's not just, we don't deal in absolutes. Only the Sith deal in absolutes. Yeah, it's only the Sith deal in absolutes. It's not just one way or the other. He's like, there has to be a compromise. And honestly, I don't think Shion loves number six or the concept of the city. I don't think so at all, because he clearly was questioning the city and questioning its loyalty from the start. But his mom lives there, and that's his only family, and that's someone he loves and cares about. So of course he wants to protect them. And I think Nezumi knows that, but Nezumi doesn't want to admit that, because again, Nezumi doesn't want to admit that he has vulnerability. But he does. But he does. And by the end of this episode, yes, it's clear that Nezumi wants to keep Shion close to him. As much as Nezumi has spent this episode being like, I'll kill you if you rebel, or he just doesn't want Shion going back and getting killed. That's the gist of it. He doesn't want Shion going back to number six because he knows they'll kill him. They don't care about creating a serum. As far as Nezumi is concerned, they don't care about saving the people. They just want to sweep it all under the rug and move on. And he knows that if Shion goes back, he's going to be in very, very real danger. And so, because he likes Shion and cares about Shion, this is his warped way of keeping him safe. And that was pretty much proven when the mouse gives the note about Safu, because I thought he was going to throw it in the fire and burn it. I thought he was going to just burn the note and be like, he'll never know, but he didn't yet. So I don't know if he's burned it or if he's keeping it and maybe decides to give it to him later. But that moment where he's looking around and seeing the reminders of them being together, he's like, if he knows Safu's in danger, he'll just fly into the face of it and possibly get killed, and he doesn't want that. So he's still trying to keep Shion at arm's length so that he doesn't have to admit these feelings, but they're there in full force, and it's like, yeah, you're not fooling anybody, Nezumi. You're not fooling anyone at all. But, okay. Yeah. So, I feel like this episode was pretty good. We didn't get a lot of the world building and development. It was definitely more character driven with Safu and Shion and Nezumi. And I have a feeling, based on the preview, that it's going to keep with that. So like I said, I am glad that I am going to go back and read the manga to hopefully get more on the world building and what's going on with number six in general. I mean, at the start of this episode, we got a lot of that, of how number six does not want outside influence. It wants to keep outside culture at bay. And Nezumi isn't wrong. If they tore down the wall, yes, well, that seems like a great idea, and it seems like it could be the compromise. I don't think it would solve anything. I think it would, like Nezumi said, make things really complicated and chaotic. But on the other hand, it could lead to something. You know, from that chaos, I mean, what would end up happening? So, I don't know. I can see Shion wanting to have that compromise in that third option, and Nezumi being like, that's not going to work, and how are we two people going to tear down a wall? You saw for a second, it like flickered that he thought about it. He was like, oh yeah, we could do that. And then he was like, no. So, I really liked this episode. It was really, really good. But I'm worried for the mom. I'm really worried for the mom. I'm worried for Safu, because we have no clue what's happening with her, but I'm really worried for the mom, because that doesn't look good. So we shall see, I guess. But I'm curious to know your thoughts below. I'm liking this series so far. As we're past the halfway point, like I said, when I get to episode 8, I'll probably try to catch up with the manga. At the end of next episode's episode 7. So at the end of episode 7, I'll probably try to catch up with the manga and see where we're at and what's been left, so I can talk about it with episode 8. But in the meantime, I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please, no spoilers, but I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with episode 7 of number 6. Bye.